Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me Ben Dunn, who currently has the Ninja High School Swimsuit Volume 1 Kickstarter running, which I love, and I'm going to be backing that most likely tomorrow, if not tonight. So I'm going to encourage everybody to go back that right now or throughout this entire interview that we're doing. And I know that you have done everything in comics, legitly in the last 37 years. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here, and I'll do what I can to make it entertaining.
Yeah, I am very excited because we were speaking briefly before, and obviously this Ninja High School is one of the first English original mangas to come over, one of the first English mangas to make it really big in the United States, starting in the late 80s and going through all the way to 2009. And we're going to talk a lot about Ninja High School, but I do want to briefly let you explain who you are because you have done, as I stated, everything in comics and dealing with Antarctica Press and a variety of other things. Obviously, you have a comic that has been adapted into a Netflix show. I mean, you name it, you've done it. So obviously, I want just like the elevator pitch of who you are before we dive into Ninja High School.
Well, I'm just like any other person. I just wanted to do comics ever since I was a kid. When I started reading them, and I just made it my mission to want to do it. I didn't think about doing anything else. So I just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, and until I'm here where I am.
Yeah, and you've done so much, and I do want to talk a little bit about your background because you were born in Taiwan, and then
Yeah.
you came over to the U.S. Then you lived in the Midwest for a while, and you grew up, and then I think you were also were in Texas for a little while. And so, like, how'd you even get into comics? Because it's crazy your journey and that influence. And then you were also back in Taiwan for a little bit. And obviously, that's closer to Japan, in case anybody doesn't know geography. So, obviously, how did that all happen? And how did you get into comics as a reader? And then what influenced you to say, hey, I want to go and draw stuff and write stuff and make things happen?
Well, I don't know. I guess it started when I started reading the comic strips for the newspapers, when newspapers had comic strips, and I just started falling in love with reading them every day, because my dad had a subscription to the local paper, and the first thing I would do is read the comic strip section, and and then that started getting into getting comics. I I think my parents bought me like a whole bunch of old used comics, and I just started reading them, and I just started loving them, and then I started drawing, imitating them, and making my own comics, and I started collecting them, and then when the direct market started to open up, I felt this was a good opportunity for me to get in to do to publish comics and get them into comic stores. During the early and mid '80s. And then I just kept at it, and kept at it and kept at it, just getting material out there. And like you mentioned, I was in Taiwan during the 1970s, and that's where I discovered the manga for the first time. And I brought a whole bunch of those over from my trip there and started imitating their style and their look, and also started I fell in love with the mangas as well. And at that time, no one knew anything much about manga except for like maybe a small diehard group who were aware of it. So I made it sort of my mission to get that out there and expose people to this new art form. Well,
And what was
not
that like? Because you paved the path for manga in many ways in America and introduced people to it. And it is a big deal. Because I'm a big manga fan. I love going to Barnes and Noble and going through the manga section. Like, I'm a manga consumer. I love it. I'm reading a bunch of stuff right now, manga wise. And I think it's an amazing comic thing. I think it's benefited America way more than it's benefited Japan. I think America got the better deal in all of it. And obviously, we're seeing anime. Crunchyroll was just acquired for $1.2 billion. This isn't, it's not a small world, and manga gets turned into anime. But even what was that like? Even just reading that and bringing that over and all that stuff. So it's crazy to me that you were the guy that sort of helped to pave that path.
Well, I mean, I can't take credit for that because manga has always been around for a long time, and all I did was basically take the style and just adapted it to what I felt I wanted to do, and hope that it would pay off in some fashion, and that people would like this new style, and the thing is, to me, comics, whether they come from Japan or Europe or from the United States, I mean, I think it's just a great art form. You can really communicate ideas with it, and you can really you can entertain with it. You can create new characters. It's just an amazing art form, And I just think that and just manga just happened to be one of those art styles I really gravitated to. But I like any comics, to be honest. It just happened that it was kind of a new thing for me, and I just felt that I could adapt it, into doing stories with it.
Yeah, and I agree. And I also feel that manga has somewhat of an advantage on comics where a lot of manga is weekly, and that's a nice advantage in Japan. And also, to some degree, some of those mangas are way more animated and they have way more action in them. And I love it. I just love all comics. I'm a big fan of, French comics because that's a big market too that I feel is underappreciated, under tapped into. And so I love the fact that you brought it over. I love the fact that you also helped and founded Antarctica Press, which is one of the coolest comics companies on earth. Pun intended. Pun intended. And you guys do a bunch of cool stuff, and you've done a bunch of satire stuff that I've thoroughly enjoyed. And then there's a bunch of stuff that you guys have done that I think is hilarious. Um, and that's one of the companies that I also felt that was bringing over a lot of manga stuff and a lot of other things that were outside the norm that a DC and Marvel weren't bringing over, or a Top Cow wasn't bringing over per se. And I think it was a nice, I guess, introduction and also a nice alternative in many ways. And this was a little bit before my time. I was born in '93, so I came into Antarctica looking back in hindsight. But even still, going through comic history, I felt it was such an alternative to everything that was mainstream.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, when I started Antarctic Press, my mission was just basically just to do my own comics. But then, and that of my friends and people that I knew, but then it grew from there because I knew that one of the things that is important in publishing is that you keep publishing. Once you stop, publishing, it's really difficult to get back into the swing of things. And I felt that one of the things that you know we tried to avoid was to compete directly with Marvel and DC because let's face it, they're the big men on campus, and I figured that what we would do is we would do comics to fill niches that weren't being fulfilled. If there was doing furry comics or manga or steampunk comics, I mean, those and creators with unique visions that otherwise wouldn't have given the opportunity to be published by the big two. Because Marvel and DC, their whole modus operandi is that they own the creations that they do. So their interest is only to focus on material that they can own and exploit on their own. Uh, Small publishers tend to focus on creator-owned material where the creator himself owns the creation and can take it from one publisher to another, and it's up to the publisher that he's working for. I mean, the creator has to be happy with that publisher he's working for. Otherwise, he's just going to take his creation to somebody else. You know, my big advantage as far as being a publisher is concerned is that I can write and draw my material, and anything I write and draw ends up belonging to Anarchic Press, which it can use to exploit, later on down the line as an IP that it can own. And that is the key, I think, to publishing, is that publishers, and I know this is kind of not a popular opinion, but publishers have to own some kind of IP in order for it to survive. And I know creators who create their own material can use their own creation to make to build on their success, basically. So like Smith owns Bone, hook, line, and sinker. And then other creators, they own their own things as well. See, Anarchic Press has the advantage that I can create, draw IPs that, and then let the company, you know, have it, so that it has something that it can rely on. Ninja High School is just part of that equation.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people don't understand is that, they do need that, especially with where the industry is today. I don't know what it was like in the 90s, but I know that in 2021, you know, publishing houses need to own characters, they need to own things. I mean, movies are big. It's a big, complicated entity because now you have movies that do billions of dollars and they're only going to get bigger. And you have things like HBO Max, and you have Disney Plus, and so it is complicated with that and everything that's going on. And then you also, but at the same
Well,
time,
it's only as complicated as you want it today. Uh, uh, the advent of the internet. Oh, I lost you there for a minute.
yeah, we're back. We're back. This happens. It adds character to the interview. Hopefully.
2000s, we the market, and to go through Diamond Comics, or direct market, and or work for the big two, or get your stuff published through other publishers. Now, you really, to be honest, publishers are becoming more of an antiquated concept. I mean, with the advent of the internet, where people can publish books directly, online, and people can read them. I mean, you don't get a physical comic, but you can read comics online without any problem, and be potentially seen by literally, millions of people, overnight, if your material hits off. And with the advent of crowdfunding, any creator can take his idea and try to convince people to fund his project, or his or her project, and get it out there. He no longer has to go through comic stores or through publishers or through the direct market. They can just go directly to direct to consumer. So the whole dynamic is changing, and it you have to adapt to the new dynamic. I mean, we are the concept of gatekeeping is starting to crumble. Okay, we the creator itself can go directly to the consumer. He no longer has to rely, on anybody telling him or her, what he needs to do, in order to get his idea out there. He could just say, "This is my idea. You know, are you willing to fund it?" And that's really what it comes down to, is trying to monetize your idea. Okay, and if you can do that, then you have unlimited potential. Anybody can do it if they just put their mind to it. 99% of any successful venture is just getting off your butt and doing it. It doesn't do you any good to have your idea locked up in your head. Okay, you can have the greatest idea in the world for a comic book or for a movie or whatever, but it does nobody any good if it stays locked up in your head. Okay, you've got to get it out there in some fashion. You've got to put it in some ways so that other people can take a look at it and say, wow, that is a great idea, you know.
I agree in which that I love Kickstarter. It took me a while to come back because I got burned on a Kickstarter, left a very negative taste in my mouth, and it took me about 18 months to come back. And then I backed the book, and because I backed the book, it was direct to consumer. It was Charles Soule and Ryan Brown's curse word book, and it's a big book. It's the entire collection of it, and then like 3 bonus stories. And it was cheaper than if I bought all the curse word stuff through Image. It was cheaper than if I bought all the issues at full price. It's in a nice hardcover thing, which means that it's going to last a lot longer. Um, and to and if they ever put this book out, it's going to be like $100, and the backing was only 75. And so I love the fact that it was direct to me. They got to do their own work, supporting indie in many ways, and that it was cheaper. And so it saves me money. So now a book that I would normally spend $100 on is only 75, and it's directly to me, and then I don't have to go track it down, and then I get to see the entire process. I love the concept, and I'm right now creating a business, and it's going to be direct to consumer, because why do I want to give anybody any profit minus Stripe, which is going to take 3% as my payment processor, which is industry standard. Beyond that, that's the only middleman because there's no way around it. But it's great. I mean, if I'm only having to give up 3% of my entire sales, it's a no-brainer. And I think that's what Kickstarter is. I mean, obviously Kickstarter is a little bit higher, but even still, it's relatively cheap, all things considering.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, or in whatever platform, crowdfunding platforms you use, allow you to go direct. Now, it's not always for everyone. Some creators are not adept at handling the process of producing a book. They'd rather just sit and create material and not bother with the nuance of fulfilling rewards, doing the campaign, promoting their material, because that's what the publishers used to do. I mean, are supposed to do. They're supposed to take a creator's project and do all the legwork for him. Do the promotion, do the printing, do the distribution. And the the thing is that a creator will nowadays, in order, especially one that's starting off, and even established ones, are beginning to realize that, hey, there is a huge opportunity out there, to not only create something that I want, to create, but that people will back. But at the same time, I have to also be responsible for fulfilling, my promises and my rewards, so that, and get the physical product to, to my backer. Because I tell you what, if you burn your backers, chances are they're not going to come back, because they're not going to trust you, and in this industry, it's all about trust. You have to be able to, you know, uh, tell your customers, your backers, your readers, that I'm going to put out a product you're going to enjoy, you know, and you can rely on me to do that, And I tell you, it's a whole new ball game, because right now the technology is there. Where, I mean, I've seen stuff on YouTube by people who are not do not do this for a living. They're just doing it for fun, and they do material that rivals, things that are coming out from the, studios, and people are producing comics that are just as good, if not better, than the stuff that Marvel and DC are producing. So when you have a huge plethora of a of material that's coming out, that can show that you don't need to be hampered, by gatekeepers, then the sky's the limit. I mean, people are doing movies and fan films and all sorts of things, on their own, and doing it better than, these multi-million dollar productions, and so, this is to me the beginning, of a brand new creator owned industry. And of course, with the pandemic, this has shown, and the lockdowns have really shown the weaknesses of the established, paradigm that used to be the comic direct market in the studio system. It's all starting to really show their weaknesses right now, and it's right now. I feel this is the opportunity for small independent creators to really, really jump on and create the next Star Wars. The next Harry Potter, the next. I mean, you have to think that all those properties started in the minds of these guys, and a lot of people didn't believe that they would ever become successful. And so you just have to believe in your project and just get it out there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo what you were saying because I started this entire process as a second podcast, and 22 days it will be a full year, and I've done over 100 interviews, and I am a big proponent. I've been saying it for a while that this is the rise of indie, in which
Absolutely.
that Kickstarter is the place to be, Indiegogo is the place to be. I personally don't care where you crowdfund. I don't have a personal preference. Some people do. That's up to them. I think it's been weaponized and in the worst way possible because however you get your books funded doesn't matter to me. As long as I get my books, I'm happy and I'm a happy camper. And as long as I get to talk to people about them, that's cool too. And they have advantages and disadvantages, both of them do. So having said that, but I do think this is the rise of indie. And I also think it's the rise of ideas that 10 years ago were good but couldn't get funded in the mainstream. And now this is an equalizer. And we're also starting to see big companies come into Kickstarter now. I mean, we see Curse Words did 120,000 or 130,000. Scott Snyder did like 300,000. Keanu Reeves with Berserk did nearly 1 million, pretty close to it. I'm sure with their backer kit, they've probably pushed over 1 million easily. Todd McFarlane with the Spawn toy did like 5 million. So and I know that's a toy, but obviously there's a lot of business to be done on Kickstarter for the small guy and the big guy and everybody in between. And you've had many successful Kickstarters that you've done, 20, 30, $40,000. So obviously there's room for everybody
No, I've never had anything go that high, but I tell you what, the thing about it is that, if you have a good project that people are willing to support, you really don't really need that many backers to make a pretty successful campaign. The beauty of it is that it used to be because of, uh, the number of people that were involved in the distribution of a particular item. Every single layer took a little bit out. So when, back in the direct market, you had to sell your comic at a steep discount in order for Diamond to distribute your book. And then they had to do a deep, deep discount to the retailer, and then they had to sell directly to the consumer, that they took a chance on whether or not somebody was going to even buy the book. And it was on a non-returnable basis. Now with the direct to consumer model, okay, you can do quite well with just a couple of hundred backers. I mean, you know, if you look at the numbers, you don't really need that many backers in order to do quite well. I mean, it's very impressive when you see projects getting into six figures, and making a huge, and that's the kind of money that attracts, talent, because they see that there is a potential to make that kind of money. Because if you think about it, an average uh, when I was when I did the Marvel manga verse for Marvel Comics, and this is in 2000. My base rate was $35 a page. You know, and if you think about it, if you did like 10 pages, uh, uh, well, I mean, you don't make that much, working for the big two. I mean, you can if you have really if your book really sells well, but when you can make just as much money doing a crowdfunding project, okay, and you don't really need that many backers in order to do well. And the good beauty is, as long as you fulfill your campaigns, and you put out a pretty good a product that people are happy with, then you can just keep doing it over and over and over again. You know, and that's just where I think uh, that's where I think the big potential lies as far as creator independent material is concerned.
And I also think that Kickstarter is now also a social media platform in many ways, where your backers then get notified. You could get your backers' emails. You could get statistics about your backers. Also, if they're following, then they see everything that you're following. And then when you launch something, and it's all nicely tied up together, and you can also see all the projects that have done well, and also it's a track record. So when you have, I think you have over 20 Kickstarters, and you've done very well on all of them, and you've fulfilled on all of them up to this date, people can say, okay, if I back this and take a chance, I know that Ben is going to hit it and get me my book. Maybe it'll take an extra 3 weeks because of COVID, but I know my book is coming. And it does give credibility to that.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's super helpful as well, where there is a scorecard.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like I say, what we're seeing now is a a paradigm shift, as you see, that the publishers and studios, and the traditional gatekeepers of material, of creative material, no longer will have absolute power. Okay, now anybody with a good idea and the drive to produce material can just say, "This is my idea. Are you willing to back it?" And if enough people are willing to back it, then that creator will be able to get his work out there, without any type of interference, without any type of you know, without any type of worry that the product isn't going to come out. He's totally reliant on himself, to get to please his readers and to please his customers.
Yeah, and I agree. So on that note, let's switch to Ninja High School, because I know it's a hard switch, but as much as I love talking about the business, I definitely want to talk more about Ninja High School because I love Ninja High School, and I haven't read everything. I'm the first person to admit it, but I've read a bunch of it, and I enjoyed it. And I'm probably gonna wind up buying a bunch of the swimsuit issues, which we're gonna talk about later on eBay, because they're not that expensive. Except the 2001 issue is very expensive. Um, but that thing graded is like $100. But we'll talk about why that issue is. But it's not in your latest Kickstarter. But we're gonna table that for now. So obviously, for those who don't know, Ninja High School came out in '87. So we're going way back in the day now, and pretty much it's about this kid named Jeremy who's 16, and then he lives in a town called Quagmire. Goes to Quagmire High School. Giggity giggity giggity, right there. I had to. It's just too good. And then an alien princess named Asriel comes from a planet from, I guess I'm probably gonna get the name wrong, so you're gonna correct me. Sulcia, I think is how it's pronounced.
Saluzia.
I'm still not going to get it right, so we're just going to move on from there. And then pretty much a young ninja comes, Ichi-kun, and I'm not going to get her last name right either, from Japan. And well, pretty much aliens are trying to kill Jeremy or kidnap Jeremy to stop, the two women from getting him, and they're trying to marry him, and it's just very comedic, the entire thing, and all their friends get involved, and it's just one of those crazy manga stories that's just fun to read. And
Right.
obviously it develops out of there. So where did this idea come from? Because I know obviously you were influenced by manga in many ways, and there were some mangas that influenced you, but obviously it is done in manga style and it goes that direction. And I'm giving a very basic premise.
Well, yeah, that's pretty close. The I got the initial idea actually from watching a lot of anime. It was actually a lot easier to get anime than it was to actually get manga back then. And because nobody imported manga as far as that, but there was an organization called the Cartoon Fantasy Organization, which I had joined, and their mission was to promote anime. So they would set these meetings, usually in comic stores or libraries or wherever place they could go, and set up a VCR and a TV, and they would trade tapes with people in Japan, and we would watch this anime, with no subtitles, third or fourth generation copies, but we loved it. We couldn't get enough of it. So, but a couple of shows came on that I watched that I thought were just hilarious, even though I didn't understand any of the language. Was one called Urusei Yatsura, which was by Rumiko Takahashi, and I just thought it was I had never seen anything like it before. The comedic elements, the romantic interplay, the premise, and then I just thought, I bet I could adapt this idea, into more, but include my own ideas into it. Just take the premise and just insert my own ideas, and that's where Ninja High School, because in the '80s, ninjas were a big thing, and with the advent of the Ninja Turtles, and then Frank Miller introducing ninjas in Daredevil. So I said, I'll just call it Ninja High School because ninjas were big, and that's where it went from there. But I wanted to create a series that wasn't just about ninjas. It was just about this kid who gets caught up in weird situations and having to deal with them. And I just thought, well, what weird situation can I come up with today for this issue? And it just kept going after that.
And one of the things that I love about this is that it was supposed to be a mini series. Started out and then it just kept going. And it was like the comic that never ended. And so it was one of those circumstances that it was very popular. And maybe there was like a few months in between certain years. And obviously there were some different companies that were publishing it at the time. But what was that like? It just, after 3 issues, you sort of have this idea saying, oh, look, I'm going to try 3 issues. And then, well, an issue 4 comes out. And then the question is that then issue 5 comes out. And then it's like you're doing issue 6, then you're doing 2 issues in a month. And then you're doing 1 issue every month. And then it's just continuously going all the way through 2009, because that's kind of a crazy feat to some degree. And then there's also some crossover stuff that happened. You had a Speed Racer crossover, which is awesome in its own right. I mean, that's every like anime's fans. I mean, I'm 28. My dad was watching Speed Racer as a kid. I watched the same Speed Racer. Not only he watched it, and he sees it on the TV while he's doing something. He's like, oh man, I watched that too. And like Gigantor, a really weird conversation. And like my dad's not into anime at all. Super, super odd conversation back maybe 10 years ago. But the point is that a lot of stuff was going on and it never ended. What was that like? Because the 80s and the 90s were very weird, especially the late 90s when comics sort of had the bubble bursting as well.
Well, it was those are to me very great and heady times because the one thing I always tried to do is I always tried to be friendly to people or get to know other people, get to
Don't be an asshole, is the lesson here.
well, yeah, that helps a lot. Yeah, uh, uh, yeah. Well, I was very lucky because I made it. I love going to comic book conventions. I love networking with people. I tried to meet as many people as I could. And the thing is that the work that you do speaks, of course, for itself. And if people like your work, then uh, they'll want to talk to you. They want to see what's going on. You know, I there's a lot of time that there were a lot of creators. I got to know because I just simply walked up to them and introduced myself and just started talking to them. And and just followed up on things, and a lot of people respect what you can do by just seeing the sheer volume of work that you do. It if you do something good, people will grab it. That's the thing. You just got to do it.
Yeah, and also one of the things I think that I also love about Ninja High School is that it referenced a bunch of stuff. Obviously, there's a bunch of anime it referenced. It's referenced Kamen Riders, Power Rangers, Ultraman, Harry Potter, Superman. Obviously, later on, I mentioned the Powerpuff Girls. If I didn't already mention them, Terminator, RoboCop, Ninja Gaiden. That's a big one. This thing references, and that's awesome because I know a bunch of people know that. Transformers. I love Transformers. Rest in peace, Denny O'Neil, for naming Optimus
Yeah.
Prime. Amazing, amazing guy, amazing interview, nicest person in the world. Fist of the Northern Star in the Gundam series. And I'm a big Gundam fan. I'm looking forward. Hathaway is coming out in May. Believe me when I tell you, COVID or no COVID, I'm gonna go see that in a movie theater. I'm super stoked for it. But anyhow, what was it like getting to reference all that stuff? Because those are major staples in American and Japanese culture and are super important. And to getting to reference that stuff in your comic book, in a manga, English original, English manga, as well as just getting to reference it in a comic too. I mean, it shows that you're sort of combining Eastern and Western culture in many ways, which is something that I'm a big fan of.
Well, the Ninja High School is definitely a showcase of all the nerdisms that I go through. If there's something I really like, that I really enjoy, I work itself into Ninja High School because, quite frankly, I'll never be able to do a Harry Potter comic or, a RoboCop comic. So what I do is I take all those things I enjoy and just work it into my own comic. It says, "Hey, I like this, so I'm just gonna put it in there." You know, yeah, I like this, I'm gonna put it in there. Because the good thing about doing something like Ninja High School, because it started off as sort of like a satire or parody comic, just as an excuse for me to work in things that I enjoyed, which at the time was manga and anime, and decided, you know what, I'm just gonna take all those things and tropes and throw it in there and see what comes out, and that's how Ninja High School works. You just take whatever to me, I like to take what's popular or what I like at the time and just twist it a little bit, make a few changes, and then just work itself into the story, and that's pretty much how Ninja High School works as far as that's concerned.
I mean, I love it. I love it. I love when people throw things in like that. And I think it is super great. And I also think that when it's done the way you do it, it works perfectly because I like the Gundam references. I'm a sucker for Gundam. I'm not going to
And it's fun.
pretend I'm biased. So obviously we all know where I stand on certain things now. But anyhow, I think though it is nice to throw those references in, and even on a more serious level, I think it does show that you are paying tribute to the roots of where some of this stuff comes from, but you also recognize the culture of America at the same time. And when you do it so tastefully, as I said before, it works so well. And it also reminds people that, comics might not necessarily cross each other, but they're all relatively on the same plane.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean the thing is that uh, uh, it's one thing you know to do an homage, do a parody, to do a satire, but the good the trick is that you make it your own. Like when my wife is a big Harry Potter fan. I didn't say Harry Potter. What's that? Never heard of. But she started reading the books way back in when they first started coming out. So she got me into Harry Potter and says, "Hey, this is actually pretty good stuff." And so I created a character called Henrietta Porter, which was basically a parody of Harry Potter, but I made her female, and I made her sort of a ditzy, type of things. See, the thing is, you can be inspired by other things, but there's a way of doing it that you can make it uniquely your own, and still, pay homage to the original source material. Yeah, and that's basically how I treat Ninja High School. And
I love it. I love it. And obviously, I do want to mention that Ninja High School does evolve over time, where it started out very much like a parody, very lighthearted, and then there are things that, as we progress, they get a little more serious. It gets a little more darker, and that's kind of a nice thing as well, where you're somewhat aging with your audience,
yeah,
especially as you get into sort of like issues 30 and onward, we're now not necessarily children anymore reading this, and fan base isn't that way. And it's nice the fact that you get to age with your audience. I mean, one of the animes that has done that very well in recent times is Ruby. Ruby has started out as I don't know how familiar you are with Ruby, but Ruby, just people who are familiar with it, started out very lighthearted and then it went dark. And then Rooster Teeth issued a statement saying, "We are going dark and we do not care what you as fans feel because we are going dark and we're giving you the fair warning that we're going down this path." And it paid off in spades for them. And so obviously a lot of stuff goes down in Ninja High School, and we go into alternative universes and reality, and there's some murder mystery stuff that occurs and a variety of other shenanigans, for lack of a better word. And also we sort of see Ricky's story and sort of a new Ninja High School vibe as well, which is also a cool thing because it's not necessarily a reboot, but it's also somewhat of a new beginning as well, that I think also allows the universe to expand as well as give new entry point, but also continue where it's going. So what was all that like, really getting to just evolve the series over 175 plus issues?
well, I when one of the things I wanted to avoid was the eternal teenage syndrome. Like the I mean, how can like Archie comics for a long time? I mean, Archie was forever a teenager, but the times changed. So I made it a point in Ninja High School that the characters would also change and evolve, and the cast would change. Because I knew that the society was going to change, and technology was going to change, and people were going to change. So every 10 or 15 years or so, I reboot the series with a new cast. You know, keep the essential aesthetics the same, but change the cast, but not ignore the existing cast. The existing cast is still there, I mean, Ricky Feeple's still there, but then I find ways of and excuses of, making it interesting, so that they're just simply not older. That since this is Ninja High School, weird things always happen. So I can use I'm building up on the original cast and but adding new characters for a new, readership. And I feel, but not ignoring the old readership as well. So the important thing is, as long as the stories are compelling and the characters are interesting, it really, you know, uh, doesn't matter, who they are, as long as you can keep the reader, engaged.
Yeah, and I think you did a great job with this. Where I feel that going from Jeremy's story, and then when he makes his exit, and then we go into Ricky's story, everything that happened to Jeremy is still in play, and everything that's going on with Jeremy and those characters is still in play. But now we also get to we know the world as well, and we're familiar with it, and it's not like it's a complete reboot. It's just that a new perspective and a new character is introduced and a new crew is introduced that has ties to the old crew to some degree, but also is very different and goes a different direction, and we get a new spin on it. And I think that is super tricky. We see it all the time with shows that were had 4 seasons on TV, and then there's a spin-off, and they ignore what happened in those 4 seasons before it. And it's like, wait a second, this is a problem because a major event, like somebody's parent died in season 4 of the show, and then there's a whole new show that's spun out of it, and their parent is alive. It's like there's something missing there, or a major life event happened that's then completely erased, and it doesn't work, and then there's just inconsistencies. Where I feel like in Ninja High School, there are very few of them, if any, that can be really pointed out, and you have to be nitpicky to do it.
Well, I like to, I I like to take a quote from one of my favorite movie actors, Bruce Lee. He says, "Be like Walter." Ninja High School is like Walter. Okay, what I like to think about the series is that, you know it can be anything to anybody. If you want to make Ninja High School dramatic, you can do that. If you want to make Ninja High School an over the top, goofy ass parody, you can do that. If you want to make Ninja High School, a romantic, you know, transgender, gender swapping story, you can do that. I mean, the thing about Ninja High School is that you're only limited by your imagination, and that's the way I look at the series, is that these characters and series, you can interject almost anything or anybody in Ninja High School and it would work. Okay, because it's that kind of it's not a series that has any boundaries. The only boundaries is what you set for yourself, and that's why I did things like the Ninja High School yearbook, the Ninja High School swimsuit, because I wanted the fans to feel like they can participate in this universe, that they could be part of it. They could actually create, new situations and new stories, and I also love to give, new up and coming artists a chance to get published, and this is a great way for them to take an established story, I mean, established series, and play around with it, do something different with it. A lot of artists got their start doing Ninja. Fred Perry from Gold Diggers started in Ninja School yearbook. Rod Espinoza. Robert De Jesus. A lot of guys got their start. Doing submitting to the Ninja High School yearbooks, and I that's the one thing I do love more than anything, is to give up and coming creators, a chance to get known, and to really get their ideas. Of course, nowadays with crowdfunding, they don't need, publishers anymore, as far as but I always feel like there's an opportunity there if someone wants to take advantage of it.
So I'm going to tell you how I read Ninja High School, because I think you might have influenced this person to some degree. And I read it very much like I read Love Hina, where I love Hina. Derek Stephen Prince, who plays Kitaro, was on my other show, and he's an amazing voice actor. And he is a saint. That guy is a hardworking guy and deserves massive praise. I love Hina. I think it's one of the greatest shows ever, and I think it's underrated. And it's definitely like Ninja High School to some degree. And I would be, if we had you and Ken Matsu, I think is the guy who wrote Love Hina and drew it, I think you influenced him without a doubt.
Made fun of Love Hina in Ninja High School.
I would put money on it. I would put money on it. So that's how I view it. But switching gears, because now I want to get into the Kickstarter stuff, because obviously we could talk about Ninja High School for the next 4 hours and not run out of content to talk about. Because there's so much to talk about with it. It's such an amazing thing. I mean, it ran for 34 years, I think, or close to it.
Celebrating its 35th anniversary in the year 2022.
So obviously we'll talk about the 35th anniversary next year. How does that sound? We're gonna throw it out there. So it's a teaser. I don't know what we're gonna talk about exactly, but we're setting the date right now.
Well, it'll be about the time Ninja High School number 200 should be out.
It'll be perfect. It'll be perfect for everything, and it'll be a blast. But anyhow, talking about all the Kickstarter stuff, because you got a bunch of stuff that has come out with this, obviously, and you've done a lot of Kickstarter stuff with this, and so hopefully I'm going through this the right way. You got yearbooks volumes 1 through 4, I believe. If there's not, there might even be more.
No, there's 4 so far, and I just got in the 4th issue in, and I'm sending them out to all the various backers.
And then you've also run, I believe, 8 Kickstarters for the whole collection in hardcovers. So obviously people can get that in a textbook style, which is a nice hardcover, looks really good on a shelf. So obviously that's awesome that people can get it and read it, and maybe they missed some issues while they were reading it back in the day, and they just want a whole collection to enjoy. You've done poster sets. You've done, obviously, I mentioned the yearbooks. I think you've done Indie Wars, the graphic novel stuff. You did an issue 177, dealing with all that stuff. And so, obviously, there's a lot of Kickstarters you've done with Ninja High School. So what is that experience like? Because some of it is newer content and brand new content, and others is going back and building out the complete collection and giving people to catch up and read it. Because one of the things that I think is super interesting is that there's probably a bunch of people who are discovering it for the first time, and they don't realize it's started in the 80s. And what was cool in the 80s is super cool now. And it's awesome. And the 80s was arguably the best cartoon era ever. And I think a lot of other stuff has come out of it. And me and my friends were having a debate, do you give up anime from the 80s or do you give up cartoons from the 80s? And there's only one right answer on that. But anyway.
Well, I'm very pleased that I was able to get these new volumes, to have a new readership. I always take the attitude that it doesn't matter how many times the book is available, because the only way that you could ever be totally happy is that every single person on the planet read your book. Okay, so I always look at that with 3 billion people on this planet, and maybe 10,000 people have seen Ninja High School or so. I always look at it, well, there's like 2,999,990,000 people who haven't read the book. So, you have to look at it from the attitude that, there's always going to be somebody new who's never heard of your book before, who's just discovered it. And the important thing is to make sure that their experience is a pleasant one, and that they'll want to come back and, and spread and let other people know about it. Yeah, and that's the reason I do all this stuff, in order to get new readers who have never been exposed to it to check it out and see if they like it. And I also put the book on Webtoons so that people who want to read the Ninja High School for free, they can do that there. If they can't get a hold of the book. So I just want people to read it and enjoy it, and have a good time with it.
Or you just want to relive it and have it out there. Yeah, let's be realistic here. It's not about the people. It's all about the fact that you just want a hardcover of your book.
Well,
That's the real reason, isn't it?
well, if that makes them happy, then I am more than willing to fulfill that.
But and I love the fact that you did the 8 volumes. And in all seriousness, I love the fact that you did the 8 volumes again, the entire collection. I think that was probably the smartest move out of all the Kickstarters you've done. If I'm going to be very honest, because I think it is super important to publish old content. And then when you have all the other things and all of the yearbooks and that other stuff, it builds on top of that, and you're giving the ability for people to have big collections now of this stuff and display it. I'm a big book guy. I love books. I have a manga collection. I have a very healthy manga collection, probably an unhealthy manga collection.
No, there's no such thing as an unhealthy manga collection.
and I mean, I was reading some stuff when I was like 12 years old. I mean, I read Battle Royale when I was 12 years old. So that should give an idea of what I've read out in the manga world.
Well,
Best thing I've ever read.
That's great. You love what you love because you went out and read it, and if you hadn't gone out to read it, then you would never have fallen in love with it. The thing is that, there's always something for everyone out there. You just gotta go out and find it,
And so I love, as I was saying though, that you started with the 8, then we got the yearbooks, and then we got a bunch of other indie wars and some other stuff out there that people can add and display and put on their shelf. And you didn't do it in a soft cover book. You did it in a hardcover book, which means that it's meant to be displayed and it's meant to last longer and it's meant to be an elegant book. And I love it. I think that is so important because I think it makes the statement that, hey, this is here to stay. That's when I see a hardcover book, that's how I view it. When I see a softcover book, I don't respect the book as much. And I know how this is going to sound. When somebody says, hey, I want to do a hardcover book, and that it's only $15 more, I respect that book more because I know that is now meant to be displayed. Versus not to diss, a softcover book, but it's meant to be displayed. And so I just love that. And I love the fact that you started with it and that you went original and you said, hey, I'm going to release all this stuff again, and that now this is available for people to pick up and actually have on their shelves. So I think that is a mistake creators make sometimes, is that you need to release your stuff in graphic novels, and you have like 50 issues. You got to put that into an anthology. You got to put it into an omnibus, or you got to put it into 10 chapters into a graphic novel versus just 4 issues into it, because I need more to bite into.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that you like the format, because it really is, I wanted to give people an option. If they wanted to read it, they had the soft cover and they want to spend as much money on it. But if they wanted something that was durable and was more longer lasting, then they had the option of getting the hardback as well. So I just wanted to give people a choice, and give them the opportunity, because in the end, I just really want them just to read the books, to read the stories, and to hopefully enjoy the characters and the situations.
And then that kind of brings us to what I wanted to talk about. It took us 58 minutes to get here, but you got a current Kickstarter going on, and that's the Ninja High School Swimsuit Volume 1 Kickstarter that's going on. Obviously, there's a soft cover that's a bit cheaper. There's a hard cover that's a little bit more expensive. And then there's also 2 sketch cover options that are also really cool as well. So obviously, I'm going to take a leap of faith here because these are the annuals. And I love swimsuits. I love when Top Cow did it. Anybody who knows me knows I am a big Zenescope fan. And so that should also give you an indication of who I am as a human being. I love Zenescope. I have made a lot of money buying and selling Zenescope books. I do not deny that. Ralph Tedesco, who is one of the owners, knows exactly what I'm doing, so I could publicly state it. And I've stated when I interviewed him that I buy and sell their books, and they know what I do. So obviously, I love the swimsuit edition. So how did that stuff come about? Because that's what I want to know. Before we even get into the Kickstarter, because there's a bunch of them, and I got a bunch of those covers in the Kickstarter that we're going to talk about individually too. That I can actually throw up on the screen. So, but what's the story behind all of this?
Well, take it in context. The 1990s was a crazy time. It was a
Those
crazy
were the good years.
and of course, Sports Illustrated had come out with a swimsuit edition, and I guess somebody at in comics said, "Hey, and it was probably one of the best-selling books, magazines that Sports Illustrated ever did." Then someone got the broad idea that, "Hey, we should do comic book swimsuit editions," and then of course AP, not one to be left behind on a trend, decide, well, let's go ahead and do swimsuit books of our own. And we did it as just a one-shot annual at first, but it was proved to be so popular that we did it for the next 10 years. So my hope is to collect, all the issues into, 2 or 3 volumes and have that be available to new readers.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. And so this is, I think one of the first issues that was thrown up there. I'm going to throw it up here, and hopefully it's going to pop up. There we go. It's right there. So
Yeah.
it's just, that's one of the first ones. I think that was 92. And so I love it. I just think it's great. And so I also love the fact that this is done very tastefully. And so what was that like, even in developing this cover? Because I think that's what people want to know.
Well, that was done by Robert De Zeus, who is a fantastic, manga illustrator. We just told artists, uh, take it as far as you can take it, but pull it back a little bit, so so we don't get in trouble. We don't show any naughty bits, so we just basically had fun with it. We wanted to include not just pinups, but stories, as well. And so a lot of the swimsuit issues are unique in that they actually do have stories other than just pinups, and illustrations. So I wanted to make it, stand out by having that aspect in there.
Yeah, and I think that's important as well with it, where it's this idea that you want stories too. And I think a bunch of companies, when a lot of these issues were first starting to come out, just had pinups and they had a bunch of artists contributing. They didn't have any stories or anything that tied in. And I think companies that now release swimsuit editions or Halloween editions or photo shoot editions or Christmas editions, they do have some stories in there. And I think it is crucial, especially if it's done right, where now it's an introduction component into a bigger story. It's super smart because I'm buying a swimsuit edition for a particular reason. I'm not necessarily buying it for the story, but I'll stay for the story, but I'll buy for its cover. And I think that's something that, Top Cow did a bunch of stuff with this as well. I have issues from 1992 that I bought dirt cheap, and they're awesome. The swimsuit edition of Top Cow, it's an amazing. 92 was a good year for Top Cow. I'm paid under contract because I interviewed Matt Hawkins. I'm kidding on that, everybody. I'm kidding on that. Matt Hawkins did not pay me. He's just blackmailing me instead. But anyhow, so I do think that's super cool, and I love it. But also, let's talk about another one, because I like this stuff. So let's talk about this one. Slightly out of order, we're talking about 94, and I like this one too, because this one to me is less necessarily, I guess, provocative, and it just seems a little bit more pulled back, but it also screams summer to me.
Yeah, well, that's what we wanted to show. We just wanted people to see that it was fun. It wasn't, like you said, provocative in a sense. We didn't want to just simply go for titillation. We just wanted to have show the characters, and just having, being normal and having a good time. And that's the important thing. Is I wanted to convey, having something that was fun, that wasn't necessarily over the top, as far as trying to be, you know scintillating in any way, but it's just, uh like I said, just typically Ninja High School. You know what I mean?
And I also love how you put the swimsuit in like fun colors, and you got the umbrella slash palm tree thing in there too. I just love everything about this. I just think is fun,
Well,
and that's what I think it screams in
thank you.
many ways. And I think that that's something that I really enjoy. And I think that when comics do this, it does sell books, and I think it's super cool. And I think people stop and say, "Oh man, that's fun." And this makes me want to stop and say, "Oh man, I wish I was on a beach now," and I love it. And I
Well,
think that's cool. So I love these covers, and I love this one too as well. Where I in particularly like the fact that they're carrying guns and weapons, and that it's
you
just
never know when a sea monster is going to come out and spoil the party.
so I love the fact that it's also so manga too. It's so 90s manga esque. It just screams to me because every anime fan who's like a diehard anime fan knows this cover. They
Well,
have.
well, good. That's so good. I'm so glad to hear that.
And then this is the cover I'm probably going to buy on eBay tomorrow as well. And this is my favorite cover out of the first four issues is 1995 because this is just perfect. It's perfect. Every furry lover loves this cover. It screams so much, and this is just a fun cover too.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And so what's the story behind this cover? Because I think this is one of those covers that just like makes me want to buy it. It's not even that expensive on eBay, everybody. So if you'd like to ruin my day tomorrow, buy every single one on eBay, and you can go right ahead and do that.
Well, I don't know. I just inspired to draw it. I figure, Azrael is one of the more popular Ninja High School characters, and I figure, what, she seems to move books, so I thought I'll just go ahead and do her a nice little, fun teasy pose, and that's what I ended up doing.
I love it. I'm going to be buying this cover. So it's amazing. It's like $5-6 on eBay with every penny of it. I cannot speak high enough about this cover, and I'm super stoked for it. So and also what I like about a lot of these swimsuit covers is that you've done I think a few of them, but you've given a lot of other opportunity to other people to do stuff as well. And I did mention it before. The 2001 is sort of a big deal of this. I think it's one of the bigger ones because it's Dan Mendoza, and this was before Zombie Tramp. And this was one of his early works. And that book raw goes for about $30, which it's an expensive book. It's probably one of the most expensive Ninja High School books out there. And then graded, it goes for about 100. And
Wow.
so it is an expensive book for what Ninja High School is. And I mean that in the most flattering way possible, where Ninja High School books are typically $5 to $10. And a $30 book on eBay is a little bit more pricey for this. And there's a reason why, because Dan Mendoza is a big name now and is super important. So what was that like getting, him to work on a book and obviously work on a swimsuit edition, early career, not well known. And I'm not saying he made his career, but definitely getting in early and giving somebody a shot and a bunch of shots start adding up. And you were part of that to some
Well,
degree. He's not the only one.
all I saw was that he sent in a really fantastic submission, and I loved it. And I thought, it to me, it was I was just happy that we got such really talented individuals sending stuff to our, and of course it's just the importance of having a venue for people and going for creators to get their start. Sometimes, I mean, back then it was not easy for creators to just go shoot right out of the gate, and get a gig doing a comic book, short of just doing your own create your own material. A lot of times, and I knew the importance because I've experienced this myself, is that it's difficult to break into mainstream at that time, mainstream comics, but with the advent, and have to credit Eastman and Laird, they opened the door for creator-owned comics. There have been creator-owned comics before. I mean, we had underground comics and independent comics before, but they're the ones who paved the path for almost every single small publisher uh, out there. They were the ones who trailblazed, and I knew the importance of allowing a venue for creators to get published in some way or fashion. And that was the whole intent for doing the yearbooks and for doing the swimsuits and for doing, the Girls of It, all the other various anthology titles. I love anthology titles. I know that it's not a very popular thing now in comics, but I've always felt anthology titles give you sort of like a buffet of stories that you can pick and choose from and see which one you like best, without committing to getting and that's what Japanese manga is. They're a bunch of anthology books. If you look at all the weeklies that come out there, there's not just one story. There are a series of 10, 15 stories all crammed into a phone book sized comic, and that's they're distributed all over Japan, you know.
It's called Shonen Jump.
Yeah, that's the difference between Japanese manga in American comics, the distribution system. It used to be American comics were everywhere, drugstores, supermarkets, convenience stores, railway stations, bus stop, everywhere. Okay, and that's where people got to know these characters on a mass scale, and they were cheap. And manga is cheap in Japan. You can buy one of those phone book size, at least when I was in Japan, you could buy a 300-page manga, for about 150 yen, 200 yen, and that would give it, and they were disposable. Okay, people don't collect manga in Japan like we collect comics here. When I was in Japan on the train station, you know, you could literally pick up half a dozen manga, if you just walk through the train. People would just leave them behind. They were just that disposable, you know. And the thing with the difference between manga in Japan and comics here is this whole attitude there. And the people in Japan, they are voracious readers. Okay, so and everybody reads comics, manga over there. Adults, kids, everyone. Here, comics have a stigma. I mean, that's changing now. Okay, more adults are reading comics, but back in the day, comics were strictly meant for either the hardcore readers and collectors or kids. And now kids don't read comics that much anymore because they're playing video games. If you want kids, but kids are wanting to read comics. Okay, it's just that we're not giving them comics to want to read. That's the thing. If you're going to have a new generation of comic book readers, you have to start young and get them interested in comics that they want to read. I mean, I know this trend for the young adult graphic novels are trending, but that's a very tough nut to crack. You have to really come up with subject matters that really interests them, and it's even then they don't. You know, the the best selling young adult graphic novel sells what 150 200,000 copies. I mean that's barely, and we're a population of 350 million. I mean, that's what, not even just a couple of percentages. It's pathetic, And I know that if comics were more out there and more affordable, they would do extremely well.
Chuck Dixon, who's a legendary writer, and he was on. Obviously, he created Bane. For those who don't know,
Yes.
and I love Chuck, and Chuck is great. He's been very generous to me. And what he was saying is that a whole generation of readers was lost the second that comics were taken out of, the like 10 cents rack in the grocery store, for lack of a better word. Right where you see People's Magazine should be an Archie comic. And that would be a major dent if it was like $1.50 and boom, it was meant for the 7-year-old with mommy who has to take little Timmy to go grocery shopping, and he sees a colorful page, would be a big dent in solving it. And while technically the big two and even Archie and a Dark Horse and some companies would initially lose money, they would make that money back if it was done right later on by building their reader base and growing and then converting that fan into a higher paying fan at a local comic shop. And it's a whole problem, and it's a complete failure of the industry. But then Dan Jurgens, who I have not had the chance to interview, but he did sketch something for me for free. Super cool guy, and it's great. It's an awesome book of Batman, and seeing the guy draw is so cool. Especially when he's denying everybody else. It's so cool at a con, and people being angry at you too is fun too. But anyhow, I digress. What he was saying is that a lot of people now, their first comic being plopped down is a graphic novel and not a comic book. And so the industry has changed, but obviously there are significant holes in the industry. And I think that I very much agree that it has to be cheaper. $5 for a book, a 9-year-old kid, is not going to take it, especially with young parents. It is expensive to have kids,
Well,
and all of a sudden, you can't be spending $30 a week to get a kid to read a comic.
it used to be comics were an impulse buy. Okay, I mean, when comics were 10 cents, you got a lot of comic for your dime. And when it went to 12 cents, that was deliberate so that, kids could buy 2 comics for a quarter, for less than a quarter. And the fact of the matter is that another big thing about the difference between manga and comics is that manga in Japan are black and white, and comics here are in full color. Now, the reason is that, and also manga in Japan are printed like in the cheapest, crappiest newsprint you can possibly imagine. Okay, and that's how they keep their costs low. The thing about comics here is that we have this perception that it has to have high grade paper, spectacular coloring, has to be presented in really prestige format, you know, thinking that if the package is really well presented, people are willing, pay more, and now this whole gimmick of the variant covers is something that I personally I detest because, it's hard for me to collect every single issue of a particular book if there's a cover out there that I can't get. I'll never have a complete collection, and so it becomes just discouraging as a collector. And I think people just give up unless you're just one of those collectors who can afford to get every single, variant cover. See, the Japanese they don't look at it as a collector's mentality. They look at it as simply an entertainment form, a delivery system. Manga is just an entertainment delivery system, and the reason people like it because it's cheaper than going to the movies or, and it's something that you can read over and over and over again. The publishers make most of their money in collecting manga and the little, collection later on. Yeah, and even then, they're still in. Like, see, if I were Marvel or DC, I would probably, you could still come up with the floppies, but what I would do is every month, maybe at the end of the month, collect every single comic that we publish, do it in black and white, okay, bind them into one thick book and sell it for $5, three or 400 page, comic at the end of the month of every single book that you did for that month, and that would give kids the ability to read a huge. I mean, if they're willing to read 1,000 page Harry Potter novel, kids are willing to read if you give them something to want to read.
I mean, I became an avid reader because of manga. I remember sitting in a doctor's office. I'm like 8 years old, and instead of playing Pokemon, I was reading manga. And the doctor took it out of my hand and said, "What are you reading? This nonsense?" And I had some reading trouble as a kid, and I was a slow start reader, and I don't really talk about this much. But then when I was in sixth grade, I was reading at a college level. So I was reading a lot of manga. And I was reading like 700, 800 page like real novels, and I was reading like the Aragon series and Eldest and all that stuff. And because I was reading manga and I was reading a lot of it, and my parents, bought me stuff, and then some of it was not appropriate. I mean, I was reading Love Hina when I was 12. Probably not the best thing, but I was also reading Naruto when I was 12. And so I loved it in those trade paperbacks, and it was great, and made me a better reader. And I think, you were talking about the stigmatization. I think that is starting to be broken, and I think it's been broken a lot, because no matter what you read, it's going to be good and it's going to make you smarter, even if there's pictures attached to it. I would just take it a step further with Marvel, where I wouldn't even publish every single book of that month. I would publish all the tie-ins together in it, and I would even narrow it down a little bit. So like King in Black is out with Marvel right now.
Sure.
I can't collect King of Black. I've given up on Marvel. I'm reading Star Wars with Marvel, and that's as far as I go because it's too complicated. But if they came out, even if they came out every other month, and said, "Here, we're going to collect every single book we've done," I would spend $40 to do it, no problem. But you could probably do it even cheaper, and you could maybe do it for $10. All of those books, maybe there's 16 books in it, and boom, I think that would kill it. Because guess what? Now you got me into King of Black. I can't be going and having every tie-in and crossover, and it's too complex for me. It's just too complex. And it's like I have a life. I order my comics 3 months in advance on Midtown Comics at this point. So it's too complicated for me, and I want straightforward. Make it easy for me as a consumer, and then if $10, $15, $20, I'm in. And I think people would spend $20. I think easy. A parent could justify a $20 expenditure once a month for their kid to read a 300-page book. It's a no-brainer to me.
Well, the thing about the thing I think I've noticed about comics these days is that they've gotten to the habit of wanting to get you addicted to wanting to get the next issue. So they have to write in a manner to get you to want to get the next issue. And I don't feel there's no problem with that as long as the story is interesting. Now, one of the things that I did, I told myself when I started Ninja High was that, I wanted to make sure that every story that I wrote wasn't going to last more than 3 issues in length, and that anybody who was new wouldn't have to buy a tremendous amount of back issues to find out what was going on. So I purposely wrote my stories in a way that would be very easy for the new reader to jump on board. And I think that's one of the things I think that Stan Lee and the old classic um, uh, comic writers did back then was to make sure, the importance of writing episodically and making sure that every, person, you have to assume that the person picking up your comic was going to be a new reader, and that if they didn't know what was going on, like you said, they would get lost very easily, not be able to follow the story, not get to know the characters, and they would give up. They would just say, I can't keep up with this. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, how far back this story goes. I don't know how, where the story is going. Yeah, and that to me is one of the things about comics nowadays that I think is, you know, basically destroying the pleasure of reading comics. You know, so my my feeling is that I try to focus on stories that people can get into very easily and that they will enjoy without having to worry about, oh, I have to buy 10 issues just to find out what's going on. Yeah.
I mean, I'm complicated because I'm probably the person you might detest because I am a variant collector. And I actually read very few
I
comics.
have no problem with people who want to buy variants. It's just for me personally, I uh when I go look for a particular book, I don't know what book I'm looking for. It
I'm an art collector, is what I am, where I love certain artists.
there's nothing wrong with that.
And so I will spend $20 on a cover because I like a particular artist and I love what they do. When I look at their cover, it just makes me smile. I mean, I showed you four covers, and we know that last 1995. I love that cover. That cover just makes me smile. It reminds me of a particular time in my life, and I don't know anything about that issue in particular except that I love that cover. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I agree where at a certain point, you know, things get too crazy. That's why I like to buy omnibuses now, where I like to buy 1,000 page. So I didn't know anything about Zenoscope's Wonderland, and I bought a big omnibus for $50. And for me, it has most of Wonderland, and I'm like done because it works.
Let me ask you a question. Are you? I understand that you like buying variant covers because of the art, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, if that were the case, then why would they even bother putting anything in between the covers? Why don't they just tell you a print, of that particular thing? One of the things that really annoyed me about slabbed comics, you know,
Yeah.
that you can't read. Once it's slabbed, you can't read it anymore. So what's the point of having, I why don't they publishers just put a variant cover on something and just have blank pages in between the covers? I mean, if you once you slab them, you won't know
Yeah.
if there's anything in between the covers. Like I said, they could all be blank pages and no one would know the difference because they can't read it. Yeah,
So for me, this is how I view it: is that I have certain books that are really historic. Like I have a DC Presents number 26 and a 9.8, and I'm a big Teen Titans fan. That book to me is super important, and I also view it as a commodity. And I know where I'm in a tricky space, and I'm very open about it. Where I am a comic enjoyer, and that but I'm also a comic dealer and I buy and sell and I view it as a commodity, and it funds the hobby and it funds actually a whole investment portfolio for me in many ways. And so it's weird for me because I'm in both sides of it, but I also support a lot of Kickstarters and I like reading that stuff.
oh sure.
So
I mean, the comic, comic collecting is a business. There's no question about and that's one of the things that's fundamentally different between comics here and Japan. In Japan, collectors, there are no comic collectors. Well, I think that there's probably a few, but for the vast majority, there's no real back issue market for old manga. Once it's read and disposed of, no one thinks about, got to get Shonen Jump number 1,000.
they're more concerned what's going on with the character. And they're like, what's happening to Luffy in One Piece?
They're more concerned about being entertained. Why they're writing it, okay, or they're out eating lunch or something. See, Japan is a very heavily, public transportation country. So there's a lot of time you're spending waiting, or sitting in a bus or a train, and you don't have anything to do. Now, phones, I don't know how phones have affected manga, but I'm pretty sure people still read manga on trains and plane. And that's the thing is that and like I said, the mangas are everywhere. If you're waiting at a bus stop, there's probably a book stand right near there that you could just pop in, pick up a manga and read it on the bus on your way home. That's not the way here it is because we're first of all we have a lot of we are very individualistic as a people here.
That
So
is
and we have a huge This country is huge compared to Japan. Okay, so public transportation is not as big a thing here as in Japan. So, and also comics not easily accessible. Okay, you go to Walmart, and I mean now they're starting to carry comics. So where do they put the comics? They put them way in the back where nobody can find them. You know, if I were DC, I would put the in Marvel, I would put the comics right at the checkout stand, okay, where little kids can see them at the high level, you know, and they can and price them so that the parents can say, "Oh, it's only $1. I'll buy this for little Johnny to read on the way home to keep him quiet." You know, so he'll just buy the latest whatever, you know, for $1 or $2, and little Johnny can read it, you know, and that encourages him to read, and it'll keep him quiet on the ride home from the grocery store. You know, I mean, you have to look at comics as sort of like this pragmatic. I mean, why do you think comics are so? Why do you think old comics are so valuable? Because people didn't give a crap about comics. You know, they read them, they lost them. It was disposable. You know, that's why it's so rare to find old comics in any decent condition because nobody took care of them. You know, and that's why they're so rare. Now, you know, I I am not against anybody who wants to buy variant covers and wants to pay a premium for that. To me, it seems like, well, you know, I could buy a really good Silver Age comic for what it would cost to get a mod. I don't collect modern variants because, you know, first of all, I just really don't have the time for it anymore, and not of a lot of it interests me. I love old classic superhero comics because, you know, it's a good read. Yeah, and
I
it's one.
mean, look, I read a lot of digitally on Comixology, and I read a bunch of old stuff, and I love reading digitally. I have an iPad. I just got an iPad for my birthday, first one, and it changed my life. I mean, I've had my iPad for legitimately 6 weeks, and it's changed my entire life in
Oh,
6 weeks. Because guess what? I could go on Comixology and I could read like
I
10 issues of Iron Man, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is from like 50 years ago. Holy shit! Like it's amazing. And
yeah,
I love it. I love it. And I don't have to worry about it because I have a subscription and it's great. And so, as a story, like I love reading comics, but I can also separate my position of that. And also, I like putting my comics up on Instagram. That's the other thing about my comics. I love sharing what I buy
I
every week.
think it's a great thing to be able to read comics digitally, you know, because especially to read comics I could never afford. But at the same time, there's something very visceral about reading a comic book in your hand. You know, flipping the pages, smelling the paper, looking at the old ads, you know, and
Have
see.
you ever smelled an old comic book? It's so weird. And it's so good, though. It's so joyous, too. Especially if it's the right smell of the old comic book. Because
Well,
you can smell the love on the book, right?
adds character. I mean, you have to think, well, what did this comic go through? Okay, what did it? How did it get from when it was first printed into my? You know, what journey did it take? You know, the thing about reading an old comic book is that it didn't appear out of nowhere. Okay, it was printed, it was shipped, and it went through a journey to finally end up in my collection. You know, where I can read it and look at the cheap printing, you know, the little dot makers coloring, you know, everything. And comic books back in the day were all done by hand. None of it was done digitally. Every single thing was passed from one hand to another to finally end up as in my hand. You know, and that's what I love is the journey of the comic book. And you know, when I collect the comic book, I always like to think, you know, how did it end up, you know, here? You know, and I just like being able to read it, flip the pages at my own pleasure, not having to worry about, you know, I mean, I like reading comics digitally, but it's just not the same as an experience for me. I mean, if I just want to read it, that's fine. It works. But for me, you know, touching it and feeling it and holding it and reading a comic is almost, you know, and is an you know, if I had a comics number one, a physical copy in front of me, I would read the damn thing. I would turn every single page and read every single page, because the only story I ever read out of Action Comics #1 is the Superman. A lot of people don't realize there's like 5 or 6 other stories in there that nobody will probably ever get to read. Because how many people will ever get a chance to, I'm sure there are probably reprints of Action Comics #1, but all the reprints of Action Comics #1, all they reprint is the Superman story. They don't print the other stories that were in there. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that that's the beauty of being able to read a original comic book from cover to cover, because then all the ads, you can see the letters page, you can see the backup stories that were in there.
There's some awesome stuff. I have some Savage Dragon stuff, and it's almost J. Scott Campbell's first appearance stuff is in there, and it's like, oh man, this is early J. Scott Campbell. Like, this is before J. Scott Campbell was J. Scott Campbell, and if you don't have that book and you don't get to see that art, and it's not even much big or anything like that, it's nothing really all that special, but it's that, oh, this is his first appearance, or one of his early first 4 or 5 appearances. And it's like, I just have it in a roll book. It's not good at all, speed up, and it's sort of cool. And then also, it's like, I have a Dave Finch story where I brought him an old copy of Cyberforce. And that's like a 25-year-old book. And like, I handed it to him. I'm not getting it graded. It's the foil cover. It's a really cool book. I got it for $1 in a bin. And he's like, oh man. Like, and he was thumbing through it. And he was thumbing through it for like 10 minutes. And my mom was there, and like, there's a long line behind us. Like, no, we're gonna go through this book, and it was such a cool experience. And it's one of my favorite books, and it's not worth anything, but it's an awesome story. And I love stuff like that. Like, when I go to cons, I bring creators old books that I pick up for $1 because you could see their face. You could see their face. It changes completely, and then they're nicer when you're getting stuff graded. Like, he drew something on my book for free, and like, because he saw it, and it was like, oh man, like, I put 2 and 2 together. So, but I was super happy for him to be like, awesome. And his handler like knew to back off. It was great. It was great. And like, the line was like, what's going on? Like, does he know this person? And it was super cool.
Well, that's the beauty of it all, is because it's like, the thing is that I'll never be able to read every single comic book ever produced. It's just not possible. And then but so every time I see a new comic that I've never seen before, or read, and I just consider it a new experience. I But the thing about the comics now is, I mean, I don't really buy too many modern comics, because to me they all look the same. There isn't much to differentiate one or the other. I mean, back then I could tell you artists' name. I mean, I can't, unless there's like a particular artist. I don't even keep up. I used to be able to keep up with artists all the time, but now there are just so many of them, and I can't really tell.
I can't even name 10. I can't even name 10. I know who I go to for variant stuff, and most of them are with Zenescope, because I gravitate towards a certain style, and that playfulness and the playful flirtation is kind of my thing, and it's both what I enjoy in business. And I know a bunch of artists in that regard, and I know a bunch of indie people, but I can't. Maybe I can name 3 from DC, which is bad, and I can't name anybody from Marvel. It's not good. It's not good. I know more about indie creators. I know more Zenescope stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm surely sure that Marvel took quite a beating back in the '90s, when that's when they were promoting artists and they all left them. So they learned their lesson about trying not to promote anymore, because they're afraid the situation is going to happen again. So
we just took a massive tangent, and I do want to get back to Ninja High School, because I do want to talk about this Kickstarter a little bit, and you have to convince me a little bit.
I love
So
in his comic history, because that's one of the things
and you must know some of my background on this, because I've done Dennis Kitchen, obviously Denny O'Neil. I've interviewed Paul Levitz. Chuck Dixon is a good one. I have to release Scott Lobdell. He's another good one to throw out there. Trina Robbins, Howard Cruz, rest in peace. I'm actually very upset about that still. Great man, and everything he has done. So Chris Ryle is another one. Ian Flynn, really cool interview, Sonic the Hedgehog stuff, and he's still doing a lot of cool stuff. And those are just some of the people that I've interviewed, who are massively significant, and I think you're part of that group as well. So obviously I love talking about comic history, and I know a lot about it. I need to get Craig Yo. And my mom has a personal connection, and that has to happen. And hopefully it'll happen this year before he moves out of the country. But obviously, I do want to talk more about Ninja High School, because you have 2 covers with this book that's coming out. You got the regular cover and the sketch cover, and I want to make sure that we determine and make it clear what they are exactly. And you can get that in soft cover and hardcover version. So I think the regular cover is pretty self-explanatory, but a sketch cover is a very complicated term in comics. So what is that exactly? And I know it's a hard transition. I know it's hard.
Not exactly a sketch cover. It's a sketch inside the book that I do, if that's what you want. The cover is pretty much just one cover for both hardback and softback. So there's no variant.
There we go. See, it's confusing. Very confusing. I'm like, what is this, and why is there no mention of this? Is it like sort of like a blue outline of the other cover? Is it like something a little more exclusive? Like, what is it? Because I was a little bit confused, and I was planning to ask you, because obviously I'm backing this. I'm like, what is he going to do in this entire project? Like,
no, there's only one cover, but thing is, if you want to have the option of having me do a sketch in the book, then I give you that option if that's what you want. So it's really it's nothing more than that, to be honest.
so it's a remark. It's like a little like thing in like the inside cover that just sort of adds to the fun of the book.
Yeah, I guess pretty much.
Yeah, I actually like that. I think that's fun. So you get to draw, and I love when artists do that, especially in graphic novels. I love it. I think it's great. I love quotes in books. I love when things get personalized as well. Yeah. So I actually like that. I'm now actually gonna go back that in a hardcover. Thank you for making me spend more money.
Sorry.
I'll be happy to do it because I can afford it right now. So that's the important part there. But obviously that Kickstarter is still going. It's going to happen. You funded way over, even if there's cancellations. I do want to acknowledge that, because I think it is super important to state that. And so obviously the only thing now is that if you like this book, you like Ninja High School, this is your chance to get this book. It's going to be a fun book. It's not in the other stuff. And so if you have a whole collection so far, you need this one too, because it'll add to your collection. It's a fun book. Obviously, you're going to get some of those covers. It's in full color also, which is awesome. And I'm excited for it. I really am, Obviously, I don't have the other hardcover stuff yet. I'm going to have to go track that down and probably budget it once I find it, because I actually want to have a whole collection here. So obviously, I'm very excited for it. So we now know what I'm going to be getting. And I'm excited, and I'm going to let you figure out what you want to put in my book. And I'll tell you what backer I am, and you'll probably put something terrible in it. But anyhow.
Oh, no. I would be happy to do something for you if that's what you want.
Oh, I'm going to leave it up to your imagination, because I let artists do whatever they want to do when they're drawing in my books.
Oh, well, we appreciate that.
If you would like to draw a picture of me getting punched in the face, I am absolutely fine with that. So because every time I let an artist do whatever they want, they wind up going above and beyond, and it's great, and I love it, and that's just my philosophy. And usually, and when I get commission work, and this is my rule, I give the artist an idea of what I would like, but I let them do what they want, because it always works out best for me.
Thank you so much.
So on that note, obviously, where can people find the Kickstarter? Because I want people to actually back it. I got the perfect image for it. I've been waiting to use it. I want you to back this campaign, so please do so. So where can people back and find this Kickstarter for starters?
Yes, you can find it on Kickstarter. Just type in Ninja High School. That's the only project with those words in it. So you should have no problem getting to
And I think this will also help to sell it. Summer comes early.
it.
Be a backer today. So if that last image didn't sell it, I think this one will. So obviously, if you like bumblebees, this is for you. Um, and obviously, all jokes aside and everything, I am very excited for this, and I'm very excited for this book to happen. I'm glad that it's fully funded, and I am definitely going to be backing it. So I will definitely send you my backer number, and I will probably make it public. I'm going to be pushing this hard because I definitely want it to just more people to see it. That's why partially why we're doing all this. And so that's as far as I want to talk about Ninja High School, but I do want to get your thoughts on COVID-19, and obviously San Diego Comic-Con 2021 just got canceled, and that's a big deal. So it's the second year. I think it's an indicator that things are not going to be going back to normal so quickly. Emerald City Comic-Con is going on. I'm a big Pop Funko collector, so that's what I'm doing at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if you see me in Danbury standing outside, Hot Topic, we all know what I'm doing. Please don't get near me. I would like to stay safe, but all things considering, and all jokes aside, once again, what do you feel about 2020, 2021 San Diego Comic-Con being canceled and where cons are going? Because I don't know how many you do now a year or we're going to be doing this year or last year for that matter.
Well, I mean, there's an old saying that my dad used to tell me is that, control what you can, don't worry about what you can't. The thing about it is that whatever the cause of this was or whatever the effects, I'm sure it's real, and it has affected people and it has affected the industry. It's made things difficult, but at the same time, I think it's also opened up new opportunities, especially for the creator owned part of the industry. Um, we all want to be safe. We don't want to have anything bad happen to anybody. I certainly do not wish any harm to come to anybody because, it would just create a lot of sadness and it would just create a lot of, bad time. But so I I just follow the rules and guidelines. I don't try to rock the. I look at it as an opportunity, to really get a lot of work done. To try to entertain as many people as I possibly can. And uh,
Yeah.
take it. Really to go forward with new opportunities that may present itself. Right now, uh, and I hate to think, that because I hate to see, the direct market and comic stores and Marvel and DC, be hit, by this pandemic. But at the same time, this is a good opportunity for creators to really, you know, uh, to really, what do you call it?
Grow, expand, gain traction. I
To
think that's the
assess,
word. Have
new
their best year yet.
new opportunities. To see that they cannot always rely, on the old way of doing things. Because they were more than willing to shut things down, to stop things flowing. And people can't afford, to have things like that stop, especially people who are in the comic industry. So, this has given a lot of people opportunities to really uh, strike out on their own, and take advantage of the situation for themselves, to create a name for themselves, to create new IPs for themselves, and to really strike out on their own. You know,
I mean, I'll even add to that. So I started this, March 25th was my official launch date on my second podcast and going live. And obviously, we had a 90 episode first season. We're now doing 150 to 200 episodes for the second
that
season.
that's amazing. That is simple.
And I'm having an incredible year. And apparently, I am getting all these people now interested in being on my show that I never thought were going to be on my show. I'm a big wrestling fan. I've got a lot of WWE, former talent and now current talent before they came on because of it. And I hate to say it that way, but I'm having my best year as far as a brand, where what I've done in the last year, I never have done that before in 5 years prior to this, and I adapted. And I think that's something that anybody who adapts as well, and I think you've adapted extremely well. And I know that you were on Kickstarter before all of this, but I think you are one of the creators, and I say this very politely, but you're the old guard in many ways, in that you have figured out and you've adapted, and you started adapting way before all of this, and you were a little bit in the Wild West of Kickstarter, but I must commend you on that, because I think you're on the right path, and I think it's super important that even though you've been in the industry for almost 40 years now, you've said, hey, this is where we're going, and I think that if you're not on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, you're not paying attention, you're not doing all this stuff. I mean, you're leaving a lot of stuff on the table, and so I think it is great that you're doing interviews and that you're out there and you're killing it on Kickstarter, and that Ninja High School is far from out of relevance. I mean, I think it's super relevant right now, and I think those projects are relevant, and obviously I'm interested in it, and I'm 28. I mean, this started way before. This is 6 years before I was born, and I'm into it, and I guarantee you that a bunch of people are going to be into this, and you start posting in comic groups and some manga groups. Oh man, I can tell you right now, this thing's going to catch fire, and I'm stoked for it. I'm going to be putting it into a bunch of them because this is big, and I'm very excited, and I think you're on the right track with this, and I think you're having a good year too. And it sounds messed up when we say it that way, but I think a bunch of people who said, "Hey, life gives us lemons, let's make lemonade," are the ones who are going to be doing well next year too, and the year after that, and the year after that. And I think it's a good mentality.
Sure. I mean, it's important to take, like you said, to have a positive attitude toward things, because, like I said, it's just a matter, you your hard work and your persistence and your ability to take something, and to turn it into something that's rewarding is important. It gives you a sense of well-being. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something. It gives you purpose. And that's the important thing, is that we all want to have some sort of purpose, and find out what our calling is, so that we don't just merely exist. We exist to fulfill some sort of need, either within ourselves or to provide for other people. My feeling is that I like to do comics because I enjoy doing comics. I love comic books. I love the medium. I love reading them. I love collecting them. I love producing. And this gives me a purpose in what I feel like. Now, I may not be a huge success, but as long as I feel like I'm making somewhat enough to make a living, I'm satisfied with that. If I'm,
And I also think you're bringing joy to people, and that's great. I
yeah,
think you're making people smile. So you're making a living, but it's more than that. Somebody could be having a horrible day, and they could be Ninja High School, and they'd be like, what it is? My day isn't so bad anymore. It takes the edge off a little bit, and that because I find that a lot of people have been saying this lately about the last, I think, 10 interviews. I think like 8 of them sort of said it in a variety of ways in the comic world. They're like, hey, somebody says, hey, man, I'm having a rough day, but man, I just got your book in the mail and I read it. Dude, it made me feel so much better. And you're actually helping somebody in many ways, because people use comics as therapy. I read a lot of books, and I reading is therapy to me in many ways, where I'm away from something and away from hell for 30 minutes, you know?
Well, exactly. I want to bring this kind of a feeling of entertainment and joy that I experienced when I was, when I was growing up reading comics. I loved reading comics because it took me away to worlds, that I knew could never exist, but only in my imagination. But it felt like I was part of that, that I could identify with the characters and that I would have a wish fulfillment of being that character or being with that character. That kind of thing I wanted to bring in my comics is that same feeling that I enjoyed, when I was starting reading comics. And that's what I really wanted to convey, and I like to keep Ninja High School, sort of lighthearted, but at the same time have sort of a serious undertone, so that's not totally, like I said, it's a fluid kind of work because, like, it's whatever whatever was in my mood at that time is what I would do for Ninja High School, and and people accept it. That's just the way it was. You said, "Oh well, this is a darker issue of Ninja High School than normal," but then the next issue becomes more funny and lighthearted. So, you know, it can switch on a dime, and that's the thing that I enjoy doing as far as the series is concerned.
And I love it. I think it's great. I think what you've done with Ninja High School, and obviously you've done a bunch of other stuff too that we didn't even touch upon. And obviously we're gonna do another interview at some point touching a bunch of that other stuff.
Be my pleasure.
37 years, guys. There's 37 years, and this occupied a huge chunk of it. And I definitely wanted to talk about that swimsuit stuff coming out because I love it. I love this entire concept. I love anything that doesn't take itself too seriously, has that manga anime vibe to it, and just it's a fun read. Like that's what I love about it. And I think you've really hit something that is lacking in comics. And I think it's great. And then I also love the fact that it's long. It's got longevity. There's something to be said about that in many ways too. That it's lasted for years and it's got over 100 issues, so I could bite my teeth in it. And when I'm getting invested in a world, I don't feel like 6 issues in it's over. And it's important. It really is. I can't watch the perfect anime series for me is 200 episodes. It's long enough for me to invest my time in, but it's not insurmountable to tackle.
Sure.
And so you can build a world in 200 episodes. Now I feel that by episode 50, I got 150 more things in there, episodes to watch. I know the world, I know the characters, and by the time I'm done, I feel like I've grown with these characters. If you give me 25 episodes, it's like great.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. But on that note, and we've been speaking for 2 hours, and then by the time we finish, it's gonna be over 2 hours. I definitely want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. Again, didn't touch probably like 20% of what you've done in the comic world. I'm willing to put an estimate on, which I'm thrilled about because it's a big 20%, maybe 25 if I'm being generous to myself. But obviously, where can people find you? Where can people find your work? Where can people find what you've done? Obviously, the Kickstarter, we sort of tackled that, but let's remind people. And obviously, where can people get some of this other stuff? Because I would imagine some of it's still around in print, and some of those hardcover books might be around somewhere, or are they going to go to eBay to find them?
Well, you can find, I post a lot of my artwork on DeviantArt under Dog Supreme. You can go to Facebook. I have a Facebook page under Manga Gin, or you can just type in Ben Dunn and that'll take you there. I do have a Kickstarter campaign going for the Ninja High School Swimsuit Volume 1. And you can go to the Antarctic Press Facebook page or the website. And I do also have a website, benduncomics.com. So if you want to get the latest news and information about the stuff I'm working on, you can always go there. And I am running the entirety of Ninja High School on Webtoons. So if you want to read it for free there, you're more than welcome to as well.
Awesome. And obviously, I'm going to encourage everybody to back this campaign because obviously I put my money where my mouth is. And I don't back everybody's campaign who I interview. It's just not possible. But I'm definitely going to be backing this one. And Ben's going to hold me accountable for doing so. So obviously, if I don't do it, clearly publicly announcing it, it's going to look really bad. So I'm going to do it. I want to make that crystal clear. But obviously, I really am a big proponent of this. And I don't, as I stated before, I don't back everybody's campaign that I interview. I back a lot of them. And a lot of these people are somewhat of my friends on Facebook and in real life and acquaintances. This one, I am stoked to be back, and I'm very excited because I'm very excited to see this stuff and what it's going to look like. I'm going to obviously get a hardcover edition because I do want to display it. And so I encourage everybody to back it if they got the financial means. Again, COVID has been tough on a lot of people, and I completely get it. And I think everybody else gets it, that your first concern before you back any Kickstarter should be making sure your rent's paid, your mortgage is paid, electricity's on, you got water, food, shelter, your wife or your husband's okay, or your partner's okay, your dog's doing fine. If you got kids, make sure they're okay. Make sure you're going to be okay next month too. And I know that I think the highest tier is $50, but $50 in today's world can go a long way, and it can make the difference. So if you're in that circumstance, please follow on social media, look at websites, share it, engage, following pages on Facebook, liking a page on Facebook and following it, hearting things, super important. And it does make a difference if you can't support financially. Also, you can get this book digitally for I think $5. So obviously, if you just want to read it and you want to enjoy it, and that you can't afford a $50 tier or a $35 tier, $5 does go a long way, and that's something to keep in mind as well. Also, if you're getting your paycheck in 7 days from now, you could back now because your card does not get charged until the end of the campaign. So obviously keep that in mind as well, that you can buy something, and if you know you're going to get your paycheck on Friday, you're not going to be charged until pretty much it's over, which is I think 11 days, 12, 11 days at this point. So keep that in mind as well. And so that's what I'm promoting, basically stating all that stuff. Definitely support is financial and social media wise, and it is super important at this point. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word because we are at 2 hours and 1 minute, and we're almost approaching 2 hours and 2 minutes right now.
Well, Andrew, I really appreciate you having me on. It was a great opportunity. I am certainly willing to talk to you again in the future, and hopefully everyone will check out my material.
Yeah, we go check it out,
With
and
no budget.
definitely next Kickstarter, where we're going to talk about that one too, if not the rest of your entire career. I am looking forward to it, and I think that's the best place to end.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.